My mom used to say, "Don't let the shiny ones blind you, Mija. Sometimes diamonds are just sharp lies." I never fully got it when I was a kid. I do now. I'm Lila. And this is the story of how I made a powerful man piss his reputation down the drain and watched as everything he built with lies and daddy's money turned to ash. The best part? He still has no idea it was me pulling the strings. Let me take you back. I grew up in the kind of neighborhood that people send Hallmark crews to film Christmas movies in. Big white houses. Lawns that looked airbrushed. Kids named Chandler and Brooke who threw tantrums if the au pair brought them the wrong La Croix flavor. We weren't one of those families. My mom, Maria Moreno, was the housekeeper for the Langston family. If you live in New England and don't know who the Langstons are, congratulations on being a functional human being. For the rest of us, they're the kind of family that owns land, not just property. Think old money, country clubs, and the kind of passive-aggressive racism that gets served with cucumber sandwiches. I was 12 the day it happened. My mom came home from work crying, her uniform still damp with bleach. I'd never seen her cry before. "What happened?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Just took off her shoes and sat down on our old couch like all the air had left her body. Finally, she said, "They fired me." Said I broke a vase. The thing is, my mom was meticulous. She once ironed my socks. That woman didn't break things. But Evan Langston, 17 at the time, captain of the lacrosse team, jawline sharp enough to cut glass and ego bigger than the Langstons' wine cellar, told his parents he saw her knock it over. And that was that. No discussion. No warning. No severance. Just get out. I never forgot the way she looked that night. Fast forward 20 years. I'm a lawyer now. And not just any lawyer. I eat white-collar criminals for breakfast. Harvard Law. Top of my class. Partner track. Sharp suits, sharper tongue. So when I saw the news alert that Judith Langston, Evan's mommy dearest, was being indicted for money laundering, something in me hummed. I got assigned to her defense team. Call it fate. Call it divine comedy. I call it AF *** king opportunity. Because I wasn't there to help Judith Langston. Oh no. I was there to destroy Evan. But not with theatrics. Not with yelling or drama. I was going to dismantle his life like he dismantled mine and my mother's. Piece by privileged piece. And it all started with a smile and a handshake. "Lila Moreno," I said, extending my hand. Evan squinted at me, that same smirk playing on his lips. "Moreno, have we met before?" I smiled. "Oh, I'm sure we've crossed paths." He didn't recognize me. Good. Let the games begin. You know how people say revenge is a dish best served cold? That's not always true. Sometimes it's best served slow, like a 7-course tasting menu where the main course is your enemy chewing on his own downfall and wondering what the hell happened. Evan Langston still didn't recognize me. Not even a flicker of familiarity in those blue eyes. The same ones that once watched my mother get fired and didn't blink. To him, I was just another high-level associate on his mother's bloated defense team. Which was perfect. He had no idea I grew up cleaning his toilets with my mother. No idea I remembered every time he called me the maid's daughter like it was a slur. No idea I used his family name as a fire starter for every damn step I climbed up the legal ladder. And now? I was on his turf. But I had the matches. Evan played the part well, expensive cologne, tailored suits, and the charm of a man who never heard the word no without a trust fund softening the blow. He worked at Langston and Riker, the elite firm founded by his father, where generational wealth played dress-up as meritocracy. And his mommy's scandal? It was starting to stain him, too. 1 week into the case, I made my move. "I hear Langston's firm is handling the pharma class action defense?" I asked, sipping overpriced espresso with just the right amount of casual admiration. Evan puffed up like a pufferfish in Hugo Boss. Yeah, that was my baby, actually. Got them to settle without admitting liability. Tightest non-disclosure I've ever written. Bingo. I tilted my head. Impressive. You've got interns drafting those NDAs for you now. He laughed. Of course. I don't waste my time typing. They do the grind. I take the shine. Strike one, asshole. Over the next few days, I started picking at the seams. Late night calls to old interns. Quiet lunch meetings with his former associates. One by one, the truth spilled like cheap wine. Evan plagiarized legal arguments. Fabricated billable hours. Slept with 2 interns and got them blackballed from other firms after they broke it off. But the piece de resistance? That opioid class action he bragged about? He altered deposition transcripts. Deleted damning statements from a key witness. Classic felony stuff. I had the receipts. And I wasn't going to dump them all at once. No. That would be too kind. I was going to drip feed his sins to the press, to the ethics board, to the clients, and finally to the court of public opinion. I'd already sent an anonymous tip to a journalist known for taking down white-collar wolves. The first article hit a week later. Langston firm accused of ethical violations in high-profile pharma case. The backlash was immediate. And delicious. Evan was summoned to an emergency partners meeting. His smile was still intact, but I saw the panic behind it. The golden boy's glow was dimming. Fast. Me? I just kept smiling and playing the helpful team member. Because that's the thing about enemies who play golf at noon and drink scotch at 3. They never see the revolution coming when it wears a blazer and heels. Next up, digging up what he buried in college, including a woman he paid to disappear. He thought karma moved slowly. Karma met me, and I move with purpose. You ever hear that saying, the past always catches up with you? What they don't tell you is, sometimes the past needs a little push. A shovel, a flashlight, and someone pissed off enough to dig. That someone was me. Let me tell you about Caitlin Rivers. She was a freshman when Evan was a senior at Yale. I only knew about her because of a brief article in the college paper, one that mysteriously vanished from their online archives the next year. But I'd saved it. Back then, I was still in high school, obsessed with every headline about Evan Langston. Not out of admiration, mind you. No, I was tracking his life like a general maps the enemy's troop movement. That article? It mentioned an internal investigation into misconduct involving a senior male athlete. Names redacted, of course. But it was Evan. Everyone knew. And then, poof. Gone. Caitlin withdrew mid-semester. No charges. No closure. Fast forward to now. Evan's firm is bleeding clients thanks to the pharma scandal, and he's scrambling to stay relevant while the media is circling like sharks. Perfect time to bring back a ghost. It took me 2 weeks to find Caitlin. Her name changed after marriage, and she deleted all social media. Smart. She was a therapist now, living 3 states away, running trauma recovery groups. I almost didn't call her. But then I remembered my mother crying on the couch, bleach burns on her hands, and I pressed dial. Caitlin picked up on the second ring. She was quiet at first. Suspicious. Guarded. But I didn't approach her like a lawyer. I spoke to her like a fellow woman who knew what it meant to be erased. I'm not calling to reopen old wounds, I said. I'm calling because the man who hurt you is still hurting people. And he thinks he'll never be held accountable. There was a long silence. Then she said, I still have the letter Yale sent me. The one asking me to keep the matter private for the sake of the university's reputation. I keep it in my drawer. Every day I think about burning it. My heart pounded. I think we can give it a better use. We met in person 2 days later. She brought a folder. Photos. Notes. A copy of the NDA they coerced her into signing, not legally enforceable, I'd later confirm, since she was 19 and didn't have counsel. She was ready. And so was I. The press got the story next. I didn't leak it anonymously this time. I gave it to the same journalist who broke the pharma scandal, but I attached my name as the source. Because now Evan needed to know who was coming for him. When the article went live, Evan's face was on every screen in the office. Langston firm partner accused of sexual assault in 2005, victim speaks out after 20 years of silence. The fallout? Immediate. The Yale board released a "we're shocked and taking this seriously" statement. The firm placed Evan on indefinite leave. Half the partners issued public denouncements. And one by one, clients bailed. But I wasn't done. I leaked the NDA to the State Bar Association with a nice little cover letter pointing out the unethical coercion involved. Within 72 hours, the bar opened an investigation. That night, I walked past Evan's office. The door was ajar. Lights off. He sat behind his desk, staring into nothing, a glass of whiskey in his hand, and absolutely no idea how it all unraveled so fast. He looked up when I passed. "Moreno," he called, voice raw. "Why are you smiling?" I paused in the doorway, just thinking about an old vase. Then I walked away, heels echoing like gunshots on the marble floor. They say when a man loses everything, you see who he really is. That's cute. But in Evan Langston's case, I didn't just see who he was, I made him feel what it's like to suffocate under the same boot he's been wearing since birth. With the rape allegation reignited and his firm hemorrhaging clients, Evan was already slipping. But the Langstons always had one thing to fall back on: money. Old, powerful, untouchable money. Time to touch it. You see, while I was working on his mother's defense team, I got access to just enough of their financials to spot the cracks. Judith Langston had been moving funds for years: shell companies, offshore trusts, wire transfers labeled with things like consulting, BVI. Cute, but lazy. Their accountant had retired 2 years ago, and the new one? A 20-something finance bro who thought encrypted cloud storage meant Google Drive. God bless the overconfident. I hired my own forensic analyst, a genius named Priya who works out of a warehouse loft and drinks cold brew out of a mason jar the size of her face. Priya said, "You want the whole castle or just the drawbridge?" I smiled. Collapse the foundation. It took her 3 days. She traced a Cayman Islands account that wasn't properly reported, connected to a dummy LLC tied to Evan. Turns out, the pharma firm he represented had kicked him a $2 million under-the-table performance bonus. Hidden, untaxed, criminal. Worse? He used it to buy a brownstone in Tribeca under a different name. One he thought couldn't be linked back to him. Except Priya linked it. I sent everything, documents, bank records, even wiring screenshots, to the IRS's Criminal Investigations Division. Oh, and to his firm's ethics board, and to the state attorney's office. Triple tap. The result? A full financial audit and an asset freeze. Bank accounts frozen. Real estate seized. Credit cards? Declined. In public at a Manhattan steakhouse. Poetry. But my favorite part? The phone call. It was 11:43 p.m. when Evan called me. I'd just poured a glass of red and was reviewing my notes for another case, because even while ruining lives, I stay employed. "Moreno," he said, voice shaking. "My accounts are locked. Everything. Do you know anything about this?" I let a beat pass. "Locked? That's awful. You should really talk to your accountant. Or a priest." "You think this is funny?" "No," I said sweetly. "I think this is justice with interest." Then I hung up. The next morning, a video went viral on TikTok. Evan Langston, standing in front of his building, yelling at a valet because his car, a $160,000 Bentley, had been towed and impounded by the government. Comments lit up with, "Trust fund tantrum loudly crying face. When daddy's money gets repossessed nail polish. Imagine getting audited and cancelled? Couldn't be me." It could, in fact, only be him. By the end of the week, Evan had gone from partner to pariah. The firm scrubbed his bio from their website. Judith's case was quietly settled, but not before she sold their family estate to cover legal fees. I drove by it. The mansion had a foreclosure sign swinging on the lawn. I didn't smile this time. I just breathed. Because we were getting closer to the end. There's a specific kind of silence that happens when you take down someone powerful. It's not relief. It's not victory. It's more like the moment right after you pull the pin on a grenade, and you're just waiting for the boom. I dressed for the dinner like I was heading into battle. Black heels, charcoal blazer, a red lip sharp enough to sign legal documents with. The invite came from the Langston's PR firm, who, in an act of PR suicide, thought a small, intimate reconciliation dinner could save Evan's public image. The irony? It was Evan who asked for me to be there. I think it'd be good optics, he'd told the PR manager, apparently. We've worked together. She's smart. Respected. You know what I am, Evan? I'm the last goddamn person you should have invited. So there we were, a candlelit private dining room at some overpriced West Village spot, with linen napkins, aged bourbon, and Evan Langston trying to act like his life wasn't crumbling beneath his Italian loafers. He looked tired. Not in the cute startup CEO grinding 80 hours way. More like hasn't slept in 4 days because the IRS took his toothbrush kind of tired. He tried to smile when I walked in. "Moreno," he said, rising to pull out my chair. "Langston," I replied, keeping my expression polite but distant, the way you greet someone at a funeral where you sent the flowers. He gestured at the setup. "Bit much, huh? You always did like excess," I said. "Though I hear the government owns most of yours now." He laughed, but it landed flat. The man was unraveling. We made it through appetizers with small talk, the polite corpse of conversation. Then he dropped his fork, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "I know you've been involved. All of this, the media, the audits, the girl from Yale." I tilted my head. "Girl from Yale? You mean Caitlin Rivers, the woman you assaulted and paid off?" His jaw twitched. "It wasn't like that." I leaned forward, voice low and calm. "You raped her. You lied about it. Then you erased it like it was a typo in your precious career. But people aren't typos, Evan. They don't disappear because you want them to." He stared at me, pale. "So, it was you. All of it." Finally, I took a sip of my wine and smiled, not fake, not smug. Just satisfied. "Do you remember a woman named Maria Moreno?" He blinked. "Should I?" "She was your housekeeper. You got her fired when I was 12. Said she broke a vase." He opened his mouth. Closed it. "That vase," I continued, "cost her her job. Her dignity. Our security. She never worked in that town again. We almost lost everything." He rubbed his temples like it might stop the bleeding truth. "Jesus Christ." "No," I said. "Just the maid's daughter." The silence that followed? Music. Rain on a summer roof. The final page of a good book. He had nothing to say because everything had already been taken from him except this moment, which I wanted more than any courtroom win or verdict. He finally looked up. "So what happens now?" I stood, gathered my coat, looked down at the man who once thought he was untouchable. "Nothing," I said. "That's what you get. Nothing." And I left him there, alone with the empty plates, the untouched dessert, and the shatterproof realization that he was no longer a golden boy, just a man brought to his knees by a girl he forgot. When people fall from grace, they always think the public will forget. that the buzz will die down, that next week's scandal will take the heat off their own. But Evan Langston wasn't dealing with a scandal. He was dealing with me. And I don't let things die quietly. The dinner had been my victory lap, but there was still one box left unchecked. The Langston legacy. The name. The brand. The illusion. They'd built their empire on clean reputations and curated narratives. The generous family foundation, the scholarship fund, the wholesome pillars of the community crap. All bullshit. All built on silenced women, financial smoke and mirrors, and media control. And I had just the match to burn it all down. See, the Langston Family Trust wasn't just a savings account for generational wealth. It funded their charity efforts, their media appearances, their board seats at Ivy League schools. I'd been sitting on a 78-page financial report Priya put together, bless her cold brew-fueled vengeance, showing that the trust had quietly funneled illegal campaign donations and funneled cash through nonprofit consulting fees into Judith's personal lifestyle brand. You read that right. This woman used cancer research money to launch a vegan skincare line called Inner Bloom. I leaked it, but not to just anyone. I sent it to 3 targets. The most ruthless investigative podcast on corporate corruption, the Department of Justice's Charitable Fraud Task Force, and the chair of the Ivy League board, where Judith had just been nominated for a Lifetime Achievement Award. Within a week, Inner Bloom's website went dark. 2 days after that, their family charity's tax-exempt status was revoked. And by the end of the month, their family name was officially radioactive. You couldn't Google Langston without hitting 6 articles, 3 exposés, and a podcast titled The Fall of the First Family of Fraud. But here's the real icing: the surprise ally, Jonah. Remember him? Evan's golden intern. The baby associate he used like a ghostwriter for court briefs? Yeah, Jonah reached out to me. I read the stories he said in the DM. I always suspected, but I didn't know how deep it went, or how many people got hurt. We met up. He handed me Evan's old case files, emails, side communications, all the stuff that never made it into court. All admissible, all career-ending. I passed them to the ethics board, wrapped in a bow. Evan Langston was officially disbarred within 90 days. I watched the hearing online, sipping an espresso and wearing a silk robe that cost more than my first month's rent. Evan sat there, slack-jawed, his voice trembling as he said, "I've made mistakes, but I still believe I can contribute." The chair interrupted. "Mr. Langston, you no longer practice law. You have contributed enough." Final. Brutal. Delicious. And as I closed my laptop, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. Was it worth it? I stared at it for a full minute. Then I typed back, "Ask your mother." I'm sure she has time now. Blocked. Deleted. Buried. There's this weird thing that happens when the dust settles. You expect triumph. Trumpets. Some kind of Hollywood crescendo. What you get? Silence. And a kind of eerie calm that makes you wonder if the war really happened. But I had my confirmation. In every headline, every frozen asset, every whisper about the disgraced Langston boy, I saw my fingerprints. My mother's tears avenged. My 12-year-old self finally heard. Still, I couldn't let it end like that. Not without finishing the circle. So I went back home. Not to the Langston's old mansion. That crumbling Gothic beast had already been auctioned off to pay legal fees. It now belonged to a hedge fund manager with no taste and too much exposed brick. No, I went somewhere quieter. This cemetery. My mother's grave sits beneath an old sycamore tree. Modest. Clean. Paid for by the first real paycheck I ever earned. I hadn't been in a while, not since all this started. Maybe because I didn't want to come here empty-handed. This time, I brought something. A letter. The kind I'd never had the courage to write before. I sat down on the grass, feeling the breeze skim my face like a ghost's breath. Opened the envelope. And read aloud. Hi, Mama. I did it. Not the way you would have wanted, with grace, forgiveness, or turning the other cheek. I did it my way. The hard way. The legal way. The vengeful way. And I know what you'd say. That revenge doesn't feed the soul. That peace matters more. But here's the thing. They never apologized. Not once. They stole your livelihood, your dignity, and they slept like babies. I couldn't let them die comfortable. I needed them to feel what you felt when you sat on that couch in your bleach-stained uniform, hands shaking, because you didn't know how we'd afford food that week. I needed him to feel what it's like to be powerless. So I made him feel it. And now? I think I'm ready to let it go. Because for the first time, people see me, not as the maid's daughter, not as the background. They see me as Lila F*** King Moreno. I wish you were here to see it too. I love you. Always. I folded the letter, tucked it under the bouquet of fresh white lilies, and sat there for a while. Just breathing, listening, watching the wind tug at the grass like fingers through hair. There was no applause, no climax. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing the monster who stole from my mother now wakes up every day in a smaller apartment, checks a bank account with 2 digits, and googles himself with dread. He doesn't get legacy. He doesn't get reverence. He gets nothing. And me? I get peace. Not soft, not sweet, but earned. When you spend years chasing revenge, you start to believe that it's your final destination. That the fire inside you will go out once justice is served and you'll walk away clean. Spoiler. It doesn't work like that. The revenge gave me closure, sure. But peace? Peace doesn't come from watching someone fall. Peace comes from building something bigger, something for yourself, out of the ashes. So I started building. And the first brick? Boundaries. I cut ties with every person who ever used the words maid's daughter like a punchline. That included family friends, law school acquaintances, and yes, my old boss who once told me to tone down the ambition because it made the senior partners uncomfortable. I didn't just clean house. I fumigated it. Then I moved. Not because I had to, but because I wanted space. A new place. A clean start. I bought a loft in the city, one with exposed brick, high ceilings, and a rooftop view that makes you feel like you could throw your past off the edge. Every inch of it, I picked myself. No one's approval needed. No one's voice in my ear. Just me and the woman I had fought to become. And for the first time, I let people in. Real people. The kind who didn't care who my mother cleaned for, or where I went to school, or how expensive my watch was. The kind who laughed loud, cried honestly, and never once asked me to be smaller to make them feel taller. Jonah, remember Evan's former intern? Became a regular at my Sunday dinners. We'd cook, talk, sometimes argue over wine. He started pro bono work, helping young associates fight back when they were exploited. The kid had a fire in him. I liked that. Caitlin? We spoke often. She told her story on a podcast that went viral, then founded a nonprofit for survivors who signed hush agreements. She called it Say When. I donated $25,000 anonymously. Okay, not anonymously. I put it under my mother's name. Because this wasn't just my victory. It was hers, too. Meanwhile, Evan? He disappeared from public life. Occasionally I'd hear a whisper, a consulting gig that fell through, a half-hearted attempt at a rebranding article that got ratioed into oblivion. Once, I saw a Reddit thread about him working as an adjunct at a barely accredited law school. The top comment read, "Dude used to wear $5,000 suits. Now he's teaching contracts in khakis." El Mayo. I didn't laugh. I didn't gloat. I just kept working. That's the thing about surviving fire. Eventually, you stop looking back at the flames and start planting things in the soil it left behind. because nothing grows without burning first. My name was no longer shadowed by theirs. It stood on its own. It arrived on a Tuesday. Regular envelope. No return address. Postmarked from some no-name town upstate. At first, I thought it was junk. Then I saw the handwriting, oddly formal, careful. The kind of penmanship that looks like it's trying not to shake. Inside was one sheet of paper. Typed. Signed in ink. From him. Lila. I know you don't owe me anything. You probably won't even read this. But I'm writing it because there's nothing left to lose, and maybe that's finally made me honest. I remember your mom. I remember the vase. I lied. I don't even know why. Maybe I thought it would make me look good. Maybe I was bored. Maybe I was just a stupid, arrogant kid with too much power and no accountability. She didn't break it. I did. I ruined her life, and I walked away without consequence. Until now. You took everything from me. And you were right to. I'm sorry. Not because I got caught, but because I never once thought about what I did to the people beneath me. You made me see it. And I'll never unsee it. Evan**. I didn't cry. I didn't tear it up. I didn't even feel satisfaction. What I felt was done. Because this letter, it wasn't for me. It was for him. His closure. His guilt. His attempt at a final confession in the ruins of his carefully constructed image. And I didn't need it. Not anymore. Because I had already given myself what no apology ever could, permission to let go. Not to forgive. Not to reconcile. But to release. To stop carrying the weight of someone else's shame. To stop proving my worth to people who never saw it in the first place. To stop being the story of the maid's daughter, and start being mine. I kept the letter. Not as a trophy. As a reminder. That truth always comes. That karma can wear heels. That sometimes, justice doesn't look like a courtroom, it looks like a woman standing tall in the life she built from scratch. And that I don't need anyone's apology to keep walking. I burned the envelope. Then I opened my windows. Let the air in. And for the first time in a long time, it didn't smell like fire. It smelled like freedom. People think revenge is the end of a story. But I've learned something better. Revenge is the end of their power over you. Joy is the beginning of yours. It didn't happen all at once. There was no montage of me laughing in slow motion with wind in my hair. Healing was messier. Slower. Quieter. Some mornings it looked like French press coffee and silence. Other times it was saying no and not explaining why. But piece by piece, I rebuilt my life, not just without them, in spite of them. I opened my own firm. Just a few of us at first, mostly women, mostly first gen, mostly the kind of people who'd been told to watch their tone in boardrooms. We called it Maria and Company, named after the woman who scrubbed her dignity into marble floors until her hands bled. Named after the woman who raised me to survive a world that never expected me to thrive. We didn't wear beige. We didn't beg for seats at old tables. We built new ones. And we made damn sure they were round, with room for everyone who'd ever been pushed to the corner. At our first annual party, we hosted a dinner on a rooftop. No donors. No corporate sponsors. Just us, candles, music, laughter, and food that tasted like home. I stood at the head of the table not because I had to, but because they asked me to speak. I looked out at the people I'd chosen, the ones who saw me fully. My voice didn't shake. I used to sit at the edge of other people's tables, I told them. Afraid to take up space. Grateful just to be near power. Not anymore. I'm done shrinking. That toast got me a standing ovation. That toast also got me 3 new clients. Go figure. The Langstons? Faded into obscurity. Evan, last I heard, was applying to speak at restorative justice panels. Ironic. I hope someone lets him in not to validate him, but to remind him what humility really looks like. Caitlin runs her nonprofit full-time. Jonah made partner at a new, ethical firm and credits me every time he's interviewed. And my firm? We just signed a case that could change federal policy on workplace harassment. I sleep well. Not because I forgave them. Because I outgrew them. Because revenge was never about them losing. It was about me winning on my own terms, in my own name, without permission. I still keep one thing on my desk. A photo of my mom in her old uniform, standing in front of the Langstons' estate, chin up, hands steady. Next to it, a small plaque that reads, "She sat at no one's table, so she built her own." And every day I smile, because I know exactly who I am. Not the maid's daughter. Not the background. The whole goddamn story. And this story was just the beginning.